library. Another new project we have going on in Cross Lake is with the Paul Bunyan Scenic Byway. They have had gardens established on the campgrounds there at the Cross Lake Corps of Engineers for the past several years, to my understanding. But with COVID, the gardens kind of became overgrown, and they're starting with a blank slate. But they were really concerned about how the gardens would be maintained. And so they reached out to our program, and we have a great group of volunteers in Cross Lake that are going to be going there regularly and partnering with the Scenic Byway just to keep things, you know, looking nice and engaging to the public.
I was surprised when you were in Cross Lake that you didn't see any pictures of the mayor with the mayor.
Yeah.
The mayor.
He's good at...
He's good at social media.
Yep, getting his face in the, yep. He is on the Scenic Byway Committee, so we have had dealings with him for that, so. Here in Brainerd-Baxter area, a new undertaking is, we call it a native garden at CLC. This was headed up by two, native is kind of a double meaning because it's headed up by two Native American Master Gardener volunteers, and they did all native plantings. We have a giving garden at CLC, and the CLC staff was like, oh, look at this courtyard, it's really a mess, we don't know what to do with it. And so the Master Gardener volunteers partnered with CLC to redo the courtyard and get native plantings with educational signage that outlines the significance to the Native American people and, you know, common everyday uses. So that's a new project in CLC. Baxter Elementary reached out this past year, a 4th grade teacher, and she wanted to beef up her science and gardening education for her students. And so Sally Jacobson, one of our Master Gardener volunteers, went and did a session in their classroom. This is a different session that she did. I don't have pictures from the 4th grade classroom. And then they're hoping to expand and have gardens on their property and maybe even a greenhouse. The teacher has a lot of great ideas, and so Sally's kind of providing the education and the what would be realistic for a school when most of the students aren't there in the summer. So that's a growing project that we're excited to see where that leads. And then the South Long Lake Park was an initiative by a couple Master Gardener volunteers that live in that area. And of course, this park is county property. So the volunteers worked with the county and with Commissioner Coring to come up with a plan to put some additional plantings in. They purchased two, like a shoreline planting and then a short and tidy planting from the Soil and Waters plant sale, and then installed them early this spring. And the Master Gardener volunteers have been, you know, caring for the plants over this hot summer, and we're excited to see how they bloom and grow in the coming years. Those are a few new projects that take place all throughout the summer. But really, we do so many things, and a lot of them are, you know, from summer-long projects to short in-person presentations to going to a Lake Association meeting. So just a little snapshot of some 2025 statistics. One thing I'm really think the program is good at is meeting people where they are. So we man a helpline. So if somebody has a gardening question and they want to talk directly to a volunteer, we will answer that call and talk directly to that person. We have an in-person presentation series that we do at the library, which 354 people attended this past year. But we're also very tech savvy. We launched a YouTube page that has 81 subscribers. Has been viewed over 910 times. We have a quarterly newsletter that has a subscriber list of 1,500 people. And we also have a speakers bureau list, so any organization that would like some education or somebody to speak on a particular topic will travel and speak to them. And then my last slide just highlights some of the demonstration gardens and green space that we care for. We're not just maintenance, we really want to improve people's lives and educate them. So we've installed educational signage in our gardens is a big thing. And also, you know, we live in a beautiful county with tons of lakes, so we're really beefing up our partnership with water, with lake associations and other programs that work with water quality. Now Jennifer is going to speak to our largest project, which is headed by her and Dan, the Community Giving Project. Thank you, guys.
Well, you're probably able to recite many of this verbatim from prior years, but again, our Giving Garden project started in 2020 due to COVID, and so some of the projects really didn't start in 2020, like our teaching, but since 2020, we've had some fabulous numbers, as you can see, and you know, our biggest being that we've donated over 20,000 pounds, or over 10 tons of food to residents throughout Crow Wing County through the various organizations and food shelves. That's huge for us. It also entails a lot of our master gardeners. But we've taught people. We've taught residents, adults, and youth how to garden. And that first success of that first radish is always the best. And the person who says, I just want to grow a zucchini. Okay, that's a low bar. The radish is a high one. The zucchini pretty much is a low bar because we can all grow it, but the excitement when we show them, you've got one. And of course, our patio garden and our bedding plant projects are huge. And our patio garden, the recipients, again, go across the county, ranging from Crow Wing County, Social Services, WIC, Home Instead, the Veterans Administration, all of the food shelves, Crow Wing, CRMC, social workers, et cetera. You can see how exciting that is. It's really fun for both the Giving Garden and the patio garden when we start getting early requests. Are we on the list? Don't forget us. We want to be on the list. When will we get our food? When will we get our plants? And they are very much committed to their plants. And sometimes it's always, well, we'd even take some more. So we keep growing and we're kind of going, well, maybe we have hit our pinnacle of how many plants we can actually grow to give. But it's fun to have that recognition. And it's fun to be able to give back to people who perhaps don't have an opportunity to have a garden. One of the comments that you've seen written up above is from CRMC, and it's from the registered dietitian who said being able to provide healthy food, healthy and nutritious food as an option to clients is really good. And then also the note from the resident who had downsized and could no longer access a garden, and to be able to have that patio garden was so much fun. And interestingly enough, yesterday Brittany received a note from one of our spots where we donate food, and it's actually Relationship Alliance. And the note says, thank you for the vegetables and greens. The residents at the shelter really love them, and do all of us, the staff. It's also helpful for the grocery bill, which we know is tough this year. And that's why we are trying our best to make sure it's a dynamite year. We've had some issues, as everybody has had, with temperatures and lack of rain, et cetera. But yesterday's harvest proved that our gardens are just getting started. And so we hope to be able to provide more to the residents of Crow Wing County. This picture is kind of our G101 students. And on the left, Miss Carrot visited this year. And you can see that the students were very excited to see Miss Carrot and also to get some carrots. The graduation day, after the adults complete their 13 weeks, yes, 13 weeks of classroom and garden training, they have graduation. And so last year we graduated 26 adults and we intermingled all of the master gardeners in there. So it's a big group of people that's working to teach, both on the youth side and on the adult side. And we know we're making a difference because we know of people who say, I want to come back. And we're kind of saying, you know what, we'd love to have you back, but we've got a wait list. Who knew we would have a wait list? Right now we have 8 people already excited who want to join us next year. And we haven't even started thinking about next year. So with that, oops, one more second here. I know you had a big meeting yesterday. Sorry we missed you. 9 members from CLC, Cross Lake, various Crow Wing County departments, and master gardeners were there harvesting. And because you couldn't make it, I'm going to extend my own personal invitation. Monday or Thursday is harvest day. If you are in town, we start at about 8:30. And depending on, we're usually done about 9:15, 9:30. The vehicle goes out and is going to the designated location. We'd love to have you come. You can help harvest. Or if you come at about 9 o'clock, we do what is called weighing because we want to know how much we're doing. And yesterday it was quite funny because we had the lineup of people with their bags of the various harvests, and people are hollering out, okay, X amount of tomatoes, X amount of zooks. But before we even start that, they have to guess. There were some interesting guesses. We had over 300 was the highest guess, and the lowest was something like maybe 60, and it came out at 212. So it's always fun because people don't know how to guess. We encourage you and invite you to come and visit with us. We'd love to have you there. Our last harvest is going to be September 28th. It's a Monday. But again, 8:30 to roughly 9:15. As we get a little bit later, it might be 9:30, but I'd encourage about 9:30 or 9:15 to have you come and join us. So with that, thank you all for your support. We are excited to be here, but we're excited that we are able to support all of your residents in all of your districts. And that it's not only the residents, it's the fact that you have people coming to join our program in every one of your districts. And they are making a difference. So with that, thank you. Do we have any questions?
Madam Chair, I've got a question. So to become a master gardener, you said it's how many weeks of?
Oh, well, to become a master gardener is actually you complete a course through the University of Minnesota. It's roughly a college level course, and you have to do 50 hours of community education or community volunteerism through the program. But in our gardening class, which kind of is a shortened version, but just teaches residents, is 13 weeks. Okay. And yes, John, you too could come. We would take you.
Really?
Well, okay.
Be careful what you ask for.
Be careful what you ask for. And thank you. I could weed. But the other thing is in that situation when you're out there doing that, are you also oh boy, that thing's a little loud. Are you required to also, as a master gardener, go out and teach? I mean, you talk about talking to the schools, coming in and talking. Is that the master gardeners, the volunteer master gardeners doing that?
It's part of the program is to get out there with education.
Okay.
And so that is the teaching part of our G101, or as Sally does at Baxter, yes, that is part of one of the 7 priorities.
Yes.
Do you want to answer?
Just a little clarification. With 90 approximately master gardeners coming into the program, you're going to have various skill levels. And there are a lot of former teachers, lawyers, all kinds of skill levels and comfort levels speaking to people who are teaching. So the vast majority that do come have some kind of experience public speaking or teaching, but there are those who really don't want to do that, and they're welcome to the program as well, and they find their niche doing various things in the program where they can put their skills to work.
One other question is, when you're out planting in these flower beds, or whatever we call gardens, are you using pretty much all native species, meaning species of plants that are native to Minnesota, or do you use anything?
So we like to use natives as much as we can in most of the various gardens. An example of why we like them is because they were developed here, they're going to live here, they're going to handle the climate better than a lot of the introduced species. And in fact, we just had a plant sale this last week by the Master Gardeners where virtually everything that was on the plant sale is a native, because we're trying to promote that kind of plantings in the county, because we know they're going to work here. But there are some things that are not native that we plant. For example, tomatoes and peppers and
Sure.
potatoes and things of that nature are just
Yeah, I was thinking more of the flowering plants and stuff like that, because you'll see a lot of them out there that aren't native. Also, annual versus perennial.
Yeah.
You do both?
We do both. The rain garden at the Arboretum is a great example. It has both a lot of native plants, but also some non-native perennials and then annuals that are planted there. So that you've got food for the pollinators throughout the entire season, as well as something of interest and color throughout the entire season.
I'd like to commend you too on all the volunteer hours you guys have put in to make this program, help this program with what it is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead.
I'm just going to add, I had an opportunity to attend their open, their open house in in Crosby. And they really did a fantastic job there, and it turned out nice, and it's very well received in our community, so appreciate it, so thank you.
Madam Chair, if I might, I'd like to just add that the Giving Garden has given almost 3,500 pounds of food every year. I know you said 2020 was your initial year, so you really probably didn't have a lot. That was more of a teaching year. But using that as the beginning year and dividing by 6 over the 20,000 pounds, 3,500 pounds with the food insecurity that we experience in our communities is tremendous. More than that is bringing on potentially 90 master gardeners, and the impact that you have made in our county, in every corner of the county, is amazing. And I just want to say how much I appreciate that, because I was one of those that pushed in the beginning to give support to the Master Gardener program. So thank you very much for everything that you have done in these 6 years. I'm sorry I won't be around next year, but when I see the presentation on the agenda, I'll probably be sitting out there. So thank you very much.
To become a master gardener.
You could also join our classes.
I know I opened a can of worms here.
Might be safer than riding bicycle.
Good point.
The one point I want to make about the Giving Garden is we started a Giving Garden based on Victory Gardens from the 1940s at the start of COVID. And it was so successful in Crow Wing County that the state of Minnesota Extension heard about it, published about it, and now almost every single county that has a Master Gardener program in the state of Minnesota has some form of Giving Garden work being done. So the program here has really been an impetus to start some good things, not just in Crow Wing, but across the state.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Hopefully they'll name
I-
a garden after
I can-
Barrows, Brussels
I just want to
sprouts.
say one thing on behalf of Commissioner Coring. Thank you for South Long Lake and what you do at his park or down there.
I appreciate that very much.
He really
Thank you.
appreciates it.
Thank you. Micah.
Okay, great. And Members of the board, my name is Nathan Jessen. I'm the executive director at the Minnesota Intercounty Association. So we'll go through our presentation. I've got a few members from my team. They'll kind of rotate up and out of here, but if you have any questions along the way, don't hesitate just to go ahead and ask. I don't think we need to wait till the end of the presentation. MICA is a voluntary organization, 17 counties across Minnesota, basically sometimes referred to as the mid-sized counties. You've got the suburban counties and the regional centers. We work on kind of those statewide issues that affect our membership broadly. And we'll have our team introduce themselves as they go as they come up here. So not only are we working at the Capitol during the session, we're also working like we are right now during the interim, meeting with legislators, serving on task forces, and also bringing county folks together, county staff together. So like a couple of people I work closely with, Jory Danielson from Crow Wing is the chair of our fiscal officers committee, and Amy Fisher is very active in our HR directors group, where we're trying to make sure we're bringing county folks together, not only to set our platform, so that they can hear and learn from each other too. I did want to talk a little bit about property taxes. Taxes is one of the issue areas I cover. I've got some data here showing the net tax capacity for both Crow Wing and the state and those non-metro MICA counties. So non-metro MICA counties, you're talking about regional centers essentially outside the 7-county metro. Clearly, and you all know that Crow Wing has a much greater than average cabin property as a percentage of your levy. You can see that reflected in the data here, and is also has a decent commercial component as well that's comparable to other non-metro MICA counties, but that historically the cabin property has kind of lessened the total share of the pie that residential property is carrying when it comes to paying property. Total, not looking at just properties from year to year. So if you had like a new property, new construction or something, that would be factored into these totals. Where am I pointing this the right way?
Quick question for you under commercial on that one. Why is that in the negative?
Well, so that's a great question. If you're looking at this, that's a statewide number. Why is it in the negative? Commercial valuations generally have stagnated, I would say, over the last 5 to 7 years in particularly. And it's going to be, that's a statewide number. If you were to look at, I think it's fair to say, frankly, and Hennepin Ramsey in particular, if you're talking about downtown values, there is a lot of the statewide commercial tax base is in those downtowns, and we've seen that the valuations on those properties has decreased pretty significantly, much more so than they had in the 10 or 20 years prior. And then there's also kind of the broader changes that are affecting commercial property, which is, of course, over the last 20 years, we've seen a lot more retail go online. So there's kind of the downtown specific issue and Hennepin and Ramsey, and then there's just kind of the longer term shift from kind of brick and mortar to more online based retail. That's, I would say, affecting retail. Though of course, the shift to more online based retail has also helped seen industrial values increase a little bit more over the last, I would say, 5 years in particular than they would have otherwise.
Thank you.
Nathan, another question. So that, on that change of market value, that increase, that's just an increase of value. It's not an increase because there's more units out there.
Well, it's...
Or is that together?
it's really together, right? So this is not what's called constant class, where it's just comparing one property from one year to the next. But like, let's say, just for example, you had a new apartment complex come up, right? And it was new construction and there wasn't a building there before. Well, that's gonna, boost your apartment property number up a lot more because of that new construction. It's looking at the total value in Crow Wing in 2026 compared to 2025.
So building or just increased market value of that property will be in that number. Both of them are in that number.
Yes, that's correct.
It's like about a 9% increase. We didn't have a 9% increase in new construction, obviously, but we had a combination of increased values plus new construction that would be reflective of that overall total.
You happen to have that number in?
Not off the top of my head, but I can find it for
I
you.
bet you there's somebody that might know that.
Yeah, and thank you, that's exactly right. These numbers, so the previous slide was just that 1 year 2026 snapshot. This is kind of giving you the average annual value change since 2021, basically post-COVID. One thing is that the industrial value there, Crow Wing's actually a much higher percentage average increase over the last 5 years, but as you saw in that first chart, the industrial is a much smaller piece of the Crow Wing pie. So if you've got a new construction, it's really gonna inflate your numbers. But here again, you see the Crow Wing has pretty strong growth compared to even other regional centers across the state, and much stronger average value growth than the statewide average as a whole. Of course, once again, commercial's kind of lagging, but that's not a Crow Wing issue. That's kind of reflective of the larger statewide trends. The other thing I would say is that these numbers are a lot higher than the previous slide. That's because they factor in 2023. Some of you may recall in 2023, there was a 17% average statewide jump in valuation. It was particularly high for homesteaded property, which even if your levies were relatively flat, was causing some tax shifts and increases that homeowners were feeling at that time. And so this is net property taxes paid across all jurisdictions. And I chose 2 years to kind of give you a sense of how these valuation shifts have really affected how people, like who's paying property taxes in your county and statewide. Just to be clear, these are all jurisdictions. So this is the county, the city, the school district, township, state general levy, special taxing districts, everything in there. And it kind of just shows you, if you looked at the previous data, okay, residential property growing more. We talked some about why commercial values have stagnated a little bit. Previously, commercial value, if you look at 2014 for either Crow Wing County or statewide average, was a lot higher than it is in 2026. If you look at Crow Wing cabin property, relatively stable. The state general levy moving to a flat number in 2017 kind of was beneficial to those properties because they're no longer paying that increased state taxes, so they're relatively flat. But you can see that basically the reduction in commercial value has put an increased percentage of the pie that residential property taxpayers are paying. Now, we know, and we'll talk a little bit more about unfunded mandates as some of the crew comes up and down here. This isn't what's driving property tax increases across the state, but what I would say is that like when property taxes are going up, whether it's unfunded mandates or other causes, that this shift is really accelerating that change in some ways when you're talking about when you're going to hear from homeowners, because when property taxes are going up more now because of unfunded mandates, homeowners in particular are picking up a larger percentage of the tab than they would have been 12 years ago. So that's just kind of why I wanted to include this slide and show that, okay, Crow Wing, very different type of property tax type distribution than the rest of the state, but is kind of seeing this similar trend that we're seeing statewide. And then I did want to touch on a few task forces and work groups that are meeting right now in between legislative session when the next one begins. The first one is the Human Services Systems Modernization Advisory Group. So last year, we worked on legislation to appropriate $75 million this biennium and $15 million in the next biennium to update IT systems, both at the state and county level. That was a tremendous success. It got 201 votes. It's as many as you can get in both the House and Senate. It includes not only that 75 and 15 million, but potentially, depending on if the state is in good budget times, more in future years. This group in particular was part of that legislation we created so that we could have county appointees serve alongside state agency officials so that when these funds are being spent, we're making sure we have direct oversight of them. We're helping participate in that prioritization process. And we also made sure that the language is a lot more specific to ensure that county priorities are involved in those projects. The first meeting of this group, which is going to happen by September 15th. We've been in discussions with Minute to try and make sure that those conversations are as productive as possible, as soon as possible, so that we really try to hit the ground running. Another group is this Duty Disability Work Group. So in 2023, the legislature appropriated $105 million one time. This is sometimes referred to as the PTSD issue, to cover health insurance and benefits costs for public safety officers claiming a duty disability. That fund is going to run dry by fiscal year 2028 because it was just a one-time appropriation. So this group, which has legislators serving on, is also trying to figure out ways in which we can prevent this from becoming another unfunded mandate. And then there is the Property Tax Task Force. This group met for the first time last Thursday and is meeting again this afternoon to kind of discuss some of the issues we talked about in the previous slides. We pushed some legislation on kind of creating a Property Tax Task Force to look at these statewide issues and trends. That, unfortunately, didn't become law, even though it got a positive vote in both the House and the Senate. The Commissioner of Revenue decided, okay, we're going to take a look at this regardless, even if we don't have, something in law. He's really focused, I think it's fair to say, on citizen involvement in the levy setting process. That's something that he pushed a lot when he was tax chair from 19 to 22. We're trying to make sure that this task force is also really focused on okay, well, what's driving property tax increases if we're talking about property taxes? And also trying to make sure that, some ideas that have been batted around at the legislature, including this past year, like levy limits and assessment caps, don't become a focus of this group, given in the current budget environment, especially when we're talking about unfunded mandates and more costs shifting to counties, aren't part of the conversation. So I did just want to pause there for a second and see if you all had any questions about this before we have a few members of our team come up one by one, and then I'll close us out too.
Nathan, I do have a question. So I was just writing it down so I didn't forget because I didn't know how long you were going to go. But so I guess my question is well, it's a statement first. Like right now the county board is working on our 2027 budget like we have been for actually the whole year, and we're getting down to the preliminary levy time. And as I'm sure your group knows, it's really difficult budget-wise. I mean, you're seeing some of these counties, like Debbie said, that Dakota example, which is quite scary. And so I think some of us on the county board are looking high and low for ways to cut things out that really we don't need. So Nathan, if you were a county commissioner up here at Crow Wing, or let's say you were me, and you are out with your constituents and there's some people that watch these meetings and they say, what's MICA and why am I paying for that? What would you say to them? What is the value of MICA? What are the taxpayers of Crow Wing County getting by paying membership dues to MICA? Because they'll probably say, well, there's another one called AMC. So what do you think that your group is? I know this is probably a difficult question, but what value are we getting here at Crow Wing County by being a member of MICA?
Well, thank you for that question. I always think it's important to think about, are you spending your dollars well, right? I mean, it's something that, we at MICA do as well. I think that there's any number of things. I think, we work closely with AMC, to be clear, and they're valuable partners. But I would say that with MICA in particular, we make sure that we have 2 board members from each county serve on our board, which is unique. Thank you, Commissioners Franzen and Lubke, for serving on the board to make sure that they're getting those updates directly from our team. I do think that there's value in that. There's also the value that a lot of your staff get from participating in MICA and talking to other folks from across the state that are in their comparable positions. I talked about Amy Fisher's on our HR directors group. She's a really valuable member of that team that meets regularly, where we can these folks can hear from one another. Jory Danielson, who I believe is here, is the chair of our fiscal officers committee, and it's making sure that Crow Wing County, when, there's not that many voices representing counties broadly at the Capitol, but it is making sure that the Crow Wing County voice can be heard in those voices that are being heard at the Capitol. I think that Crow Wing is a relatively unique county, but it is a regional center at the same time. So being part of those conversations and those issues coming to me and coming to our team and us bringing them to the legislature, I think is valuable to Crow Wing. And I also think that we're not a bad deal if you look at what dues have been in the past compared to where dues are now, where I think we're very responsible fiscally if you look at increases or decreases or flat levels that we've had in the recent years. But that's kind of my quick answer. And the other thing I would say just kind of broadly when it comes to, you asked if I was a county commissioner. One thing Crow Wing County did that was really valuable to us, you provide value to us, we try to provide value to you, is talk about education on the percentage of your budget that is mandated from either the federal or state government. We asked for that information across our counties. I know it's not an easy number to pull, but Crow Wing was able to supply us with that information. And one thing I think that we've seen from counties broadly when we're talking about our levies, one of the most valuable things that we can do is really educate on the role of the county. And whether it's Crow Wing County or Dakota County, I think a lot of what we try to talk about is kind of explain the role of the county in particular and how much services are mandated, and that, there's just some parts of your budget that you can't touch, right? So that's just kind of my long-winded answer to that question, but hopefully that was helpful.
No, that was helpful, and I'm actually going to help out a little bit too, because I served in the legislature, and I can tell you when I first got there, I had a very negative, feeling towards lobbyists or different groups. And once you're there for a certain amount of time, you realize that a lot of these people have very big egos, and they realize that they don't know everything from nuclear power to everything from A to Z. And you rely on these people that are providing you information that is affecting your county or affecting different things. And so as a legislator, these people are really critical in helping to provide information that I think to help make good decisions as they represent their counties. So I just think it's important so that people know what they're paying for, the citizens of Crow Wing County are paying for when they have MICA or AMC. We don't have a county employee that's down at the state capitol monitoring everything that's going on, and there's a lot of crap going on down there that we need to weigh in on because it has an effect on our citizens up here. So anyway, that's a long-winded thing too, but anyway.
Is that a long-winded way of saying thank you?
It is kind of a long-winded way of saying that
Mark that down.
that it is important to have these groups that really, in essence, are speaking for us and other like-minded counties. Hopefully, they're conservative, but.
Nathan, you mentioned a second ago the cost shifting and unfunded mandates. That's been a thorn in our side for our 2026 budget, and it's a thorn in our side for 2027 budget already. You're seeing it happen down at the state capitol. Can you Do you have any idea on what we're gonna look at in 2028?
Yeah, so I would say, I'll talk a little bit about the state budget a little bit later in this presentation. It's how I'll wrap it up, but I would say that, you know, it is something that we, you know, in 2025, we're pushing back against, and of course, some cost shifts did come into law in 2025, but if you look at where we started with like the governor's budget or where the House was, the cost shifts that got enacted were actually a lot smaller than those initial proposals. I know that that's small. You know, that's that's not super helpful to you, the news that it could have been much worse. But I do think that, I'll talk a little bit about that later, but it is something that is top of mind, and we are gonna need to continue to play really strong defense at the Capitol to prevent those cost shifts, because I do think they are going to remain part of the discussion.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's one thing I don't think a lot of people understand is how tight our hands are with some of this stuff, because the state is just saying, yeah, you're gonna do this whether you like it or not, and you figure out how to get the money for it, so.
Right, I think, and Jory can correct me if I'm wrong, but it was something like 83% of the Crow Wing budget was mandated? In 24? Yeah, I mean, and that's just, I don't think people really understand once they hear that number, and like a lot of the other services that aren't in that 83 are just to support those mandated services too, right? So, but that's exactly right.
Thank you.
Madam Chair. The other thing, Nathan, is looking at these work groups that have been put together through MICA, it isn't like we're going down and just pointing fingers at the state and saying, you need to fix this. We're saying, how can we help you fix it? And I think that's something that's really important. And I don't know how much in the past they've had these type of work groups that have been that entrenched next to the legislatures, next to the different departments that are handling it. But I think that's a really valuable asset that you bring.
Yeah, 100%. One thing and maybe sometimes people that work with me get tired of me saying it, it's like we have to figure out how to move forward and not just be playing defense and saying no all the time, right? But we need to be proactive because, yeah, and it's just, of course, we want to push back when we're talking about some of these cost shifts and things like that, but we also need to be thinking ahead and making a plan so that we're being strategic about it too.
And one of the things I find just in the 4 years I've been here is the fact that learning about this, going out to those people that we serve, you know, and they say, what about this and what about that? By having the information you give and the information we have, we can help educate the people. And sometimes it isn't, it's correcting some of the information they have in their head because they're reading something, seeing something, picking up on that and thinking it's all on us. And it isn't all on us. So right. I appreciate that.
All right, well, I think next up we've got Amber to talk about transportation a bit.
Good morning, Commissioners. Amber Backus, great to be with you this morning. So just wanted to touch base on a couple of items. First and foremost, wanted to make you aware of a funding opportunity. One of the highlights of the last legislative session was the passage of a significant bonding bill, $1.2 billion. A big portion of that was for statewide and local transportation programs, one of them being the local road improvement program. That was the recipient of $50 million. It's a competitive grant program that local governments can apply for monies in 3 circumstances. If you have the local share of a trunk highway project you need to pay for, if you're looking to invest in a route of regional significance, or if you have a rural road safety that you want to improve. You can apply through this program, and just to make you aware that MnDOT is going to start accepting applications on September 1st, and that application period will be open through November 25th. There are a few webinars that MnDOT is hosting this week to let people know about the opportunity and explain the application process if you have any roads that are eligible. And then wanted to just flag some issues that we are expecting to see at the legislature next session, regardless of what the partisan composition is. You're going to hear more from Nathan in a little bit about the structural deficit the state has with its budget. And we are concerned in the transportation community that to help resolve that, there will be shifts from some of the statutorily dedicated transportation funds back to the general fund. One example of that would be the sales tax on auto parts, which in 2023 was going to be completely dedicated to transportation purposes in the Trunk Highway Fund. We're concerned that some of that could be rolled back and those revenues maintained in the general fund to deal with the budget issues that the state has. The other issue I wanted to flag are the potential that the increases in the tab fees that were passed in 2023 could also be reexamined and maybe lowered again. And I think that's great for folks who have to pay that on their vehicle, but not great for our transportation revenues, as we do have more needs than there are dollars for in the state. So if those were lowered, how would we backfill that? If you recall this past legislative session, there was a one-time reduction in tab fees of $250 million for Minnesota car owners, but that was backfilled with general fund money, so the Trunk Highway Fund was kept whole. But I know there's pressure and interest from legislators on both sides of the aisle to try to do some sort of permanent decrease there. So we will be watching those things very closely and making sure that there are significant revenues in the Trunk Highway Fund going forward for the important road and bridge projects across the state. And then a couple of other issues that'll be on the table. One Micah is active in pursuing, and that are changes to the greenhouse gas assessment and mitigation program, that if you are the project sponsor of a highway expansion on the state system, which would include new lane miles or a new grade separated interchange, you would have to figure out the greenhouse gas impacts of that project and then mitigate those. And since this went into effect in 2023, MnDOT has put out guidance about how to assess your greenhouse gas, but they're still working on implementation, and there are lots of concerns that folks have. One is the increased cost of doing the mitigation. It's expected to be 30 to 50% of the cost of a trunk highway project, which will really shrink the amount of projects that are able to be conducted. And then the second big concern is just the governance of this program. A lot of the mitigations are outside the realm of transportation and have to do with land use planning and increasing density, which neither MnDOT nor counties have control over. So how would you actually make this work? So Micah is going to
Second, so that greenhouse, so is there a charge then? I mean, we're supposed to track it, or in a highway project, track how many greenhouse gases is created?
Yeah, you would look at.
Is there a number that if you go above that, you pay extra, or it goes into a fund, or what is this?
There isn't anything like that, and I think we would be supportive of creating some sort of statewide fund to pay for this, like the Wetland Credit Bank, so you could, pay in and take out based on your project. There's nothing like that right now, but if you are building an expansion project, then you have to estimate the greenhouse gas increase over the next 20 years. It doesn't matter, how much it is, and whatever that amount is, then identify ways to mitigate it and offset it. And it could be, adding new bike trails and sidewalks. But again, the amount of new bike trails and sidewalks you need to do this would be hundreds of miles, which really is an efficient use of dollars. So that's why folks are looking at things like land use. But again, there's not control at the county level to do that. So it definitely has some problems that need to be worked out, and we're going to try to be creative and solve them for the legislature. But they're making it hard for us. I'll say that.
It's a little even hard for me to get my head around what that really entails and what the costs are involved in it.
Yes, and I could follow up, because there was one, MnDOT did an evaluation of just six new lane miles on Highway 23, and the mitigation for that was incredible, and I don't know how you would even handle it. Some of it was getting more people to telecommute, and some of it was having Stearns County and St. Cloud do density changes, and this project's in, outside of Wilmer. Like, it just doesn't make any sense.
Just added cost.
Yes, and added time too, which again increases costs.
Okay, thank you.
And then along those lines, especially if there is potentially a Democratic trifecta again, we expect to see some advocacy groups put forward more of these proposals to prohibit highway expansion. We saw some bills last year that also would prohibit expansions on the trunk highway system unless you had a 6-year maintenance plan identified and a way to pay for it identified. Again, in terms of highway planning, nobody's looking out 60 years in terms of the maintenance plan for their roads. That bridges are a little different. People do look at that, but not on the road side, and MnDOT doesn't budget that way either, so that would pretty much stall any highway expansion projects. There were other bills also to require transit and other alternatives if you're going to move forward with that expansion project, or you have to, you know, reevaluate the purpose and need of your expansion project. So just things that really would make it difficult to deliver the road projects that your constituents depend on.
What would it make difficult? You said Democrat trifecta?
Yes, there is, these ideas have been pushed by folks that are in the transit and environmental communities and have the ear of some of the Democratic chairs in the House and the Senate.
Well, if they were in control of all three,
Yes, there's a
yeah.
greater likelihood that
God
some
help
of these
us.
could advance, yes.
Madam Chair, if that would happen,
Hope not.
do these people have any idea how they're going to handle, how they would handle future congestion? I mean, we're not talking toll roads here and how to pay for it. We're talking about how do we handle the traffic patterns that shift all the time. We see it on 94 down there in the cities and 694 and 494. Do they have any idea what they're proposing and the consequences of that?
I think there is an information gap, and some of the proponents of these projects live right in the core cities and think that just transit can handle it, and that's available to everybody across the state. So one of the things we're working on this interim is getting some of these legislators out of the Minneapolis-St. Paul bubble and getting them to some MICA counties to see all the things you have to consider, and that you don't have, you know, the density and the transit system to do something like that, and you're dealing with rural roads and moving agricultural products to markets, and you need to have these improvements to help with safety, and so.
So I would say this, and I'm probably a little more lenient than some of my co-commissioners, but any of those legislators in the 7-county area, haul them out here to find out what we actually experience in greater Minnesota. It's a joke that they think that that's the center of the universe down there. But there's a reality out here for all of us. And it's going to take everybody to solve these problems and to come up with solutions that just drive higher costs but don't actually address the root cause of the problem is foolish. Thank you.
Yes, I'll agree. We'll be working on some education for sure. But that's what I had for you today. Is there any other questions I could answer, or got your blood pressure up? I can tell that.
You got his up too. I was thinking he was gonna ask for more trails.
Well, I could do that, but now I'm worried about costs of anything, so. And there is a reality to that.
There is a reality
It doesn't
to
matter
that.
what side of that ledger you sit on.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Nancy Selesky, and I do both Public Health and Human Services for MICA. You can hear me okay? Okay. And it's a pleasure to be here. I just want you to know that this is my vacation week again. I'm in your county every year. I do. And we're having a wonderful time and spending a lot of money. I can assure you of that. I just wanted to start this by mentioning that Nathan talked about the IT issue that all of us were working on. That was one of the 3 priorities that MICA, along with the other state-wide organizations, had this year, and great progress was made. And I just want to thank all of you because it was truly an all-hands-on-deck issue. I jokingly say you couldn't tell what day was County Day on the Hill because there were folks, commissioners, staff there all of the time on that issue. The other 2 issues I just wanted to mention that we made some progress on, but we're going to have to revisit again in 2027, relates to SNAP as well as MAFPA CWGA. So we did get some one-time funding on that, but we're going to have to go back to the legislature again. Relating to SNAP, counties will be paying an increased share due to federal action. We're talking about these unfunded mandates, and here we are. This is a large one. Just want to mention that Minnesota is one of only 3 states in the country that pays a share of the administrative costs related to SNAP. In 2026, we got $10.7 million, again, one time. It's allocated to counties based on their proportional share of SNAP admin costs, effective October 1st, 2026. So this year, the county cost share is going to increase from 50% to 75%, again, due to the feds. This is estimated to cost about $35 million annually. So just to put that in context, we got 10.8 one time. So we will need to revisit it The other issue is it's a new cost share, and that is that counties would be responsible for paying a part of the actual benefit of SNAP. This would be next year, July 1 of 2027, and it's based on our payment error rate. And I just want to say that that can be as simple as a typographical error, a client not turning in paperwork. You're all aware of that. So anyway, what we're estimating statewide is $138 million potentially. So we need to get that error rate down, which the technology, is going to, of course, address at some point, but it's some time away before that's going to be up and running. So we'll be facing another unfunded mandate.
Just to put it into Crow Wing County dollar specifics, Nancy's talking statewide dollars, the cost share, or the revenue reduction from 50% to 25% is going to cost Crow Wing County, we're estimating about $345,000. And the benefit share based on 15% error rate at this point in time, we're estimating about $403,000. So the total impact to Crow Wing County just for those two items is a $748,000 levy shift.
So can you just expand on that, either one of you, that this is the administration of the program, correct? It's not that we're collecting people's tax dollars to hand out SNAP. No. Okay, because that's what I wanted to explain.
Correct.
Okay. And
based upon earlier information from Nathan, our tax base is based pretty much a lot of residential picks up her. So if it rolls down our way, it's going to go on to people's taxes. Mm-hmm. That's where the majority of it's going to come from.
So can you, Deb or somebody, can you expand on that? So that seems like that would maybe be 5 or 6 employees working on just SNAP. Is that for 1 year, or that seems kind of high?
So it's inclusive of the amount of revenue. So it's not just 5 or 6 employees. This is spread across other different areas within community services, not just administering SNAP benefits for one person. It's not like a one-to-one thing. The portion of revenue might be spread across the administration of the efforts directly for the SNAP program. It also could be supervisor. There's some aspects of supervisor salaries that are inclusive of there. There's some aspects of the facility charges, the operational costs of supporting technology, the supplies and materials, all of the different things that go along with support.
Are we required by state or federal law are we required to offer SNAP benefits to?
Yes. I mean, we are required to administer the SNAP program on behalf of the federal government and the Minnesota state government for Crow Wing County residents. Yes.
Well, what if we pushed back and said, you know what, we're not going to do this if you're not going to provide the money? They wouldn't lock up the chair, would they?
No, they'd put us all in jail, and I know somebody back there would enjoy that very much.
He's deliberately not paying attention. He doesn't want to have to jail any of you. I mean, this is the discussion that we've talked about with regard to mandates from the get-go. This is another one of these areas where administration of state and federal programs is part of the reason why counties are created. We've talked about the fact, but for the need for the state to have a tool or an arm to locally administer state and federal programs, there's not really a need for the state to have created counties in the first place. That's the whole concept. When you think about the hierarchy of different things, we do exist partially for the purpose of delivering those services that the state and federal government have determined need to be delivered to the citizens and residents, and therefore, we are the ones that are responsible for delivering what that service is. They tell us what services we're required to deliver. They tell us what level of support and reimbursement we will be receiving for that, and we then have to go out into the community and provide that service.
But it doesn't seem fair that we have to put it on the backs of people's property taxes to pay for people to administer a program to hand out more money.
And those are things that's why we have been talking about some of the work that needs to be done with some of these working groups, with some of the discussions that come from the state as far as those additional cost shifts that Nathan was talking about before, whether or not there's going to be any additional cost share with the air rate. What does that look like? We talked earlier, we think, statewide, the air rate, and I hate that term because, as Nancy mentioned, it doesn't mean people are making mistakes. It doesn't mean it's fraud. It just means it is a data point that is not what it is, what it was intended to be, if you will. The air rate statewide is potentially 15, 16%. Crow Wing County's air rate, if you will, is more like 5 to 6%. But because this program is administered from the state level standpoint of things, we are looking at the statewide air rate. This particular piece is part of what came, this is the three-tier shift, if you will. The federal government changed the revenue amounts, the reimbursement amounts for the SNAP program. The administrative support process for the SNAP program shifts down to the states. The states are ones who have to determine how to administer this. Minnesota is one of the counties that says, you know what? Local counties, you're going to deliver that program on behalf. You know what your customers need best, what your residents need best. You're going to deliver that program. And so those three tiers of shifting changes end up with what we're looking at the bottom line here in Crow Wing County. And if we were all kings and queens for a day, we could change all of those aspects, but instead we have to rely on the state legislature and the federal government to make some of those changes for us, which is why that communication, that partnership, that having a seat at the table and not just playing defense all the time, but coming up with solutions and ideas and ways that we can also offer suggestions of things that would make a better benefit is super important.
What she said.
Let's go golfing.
Sounds like you're done now, Nancy, right?
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, I have to move on to another one. Madam Chair and Commissioners, MAPA, CWG is the other issue that was the third priority that we were working on this year. We did get one-time funding of $15 million to address our implementation costs. Each county will get $100,000 based on the existing formula that's up on the board. You can see it's based on child population, number of screened and reports of child maltreatment, and the number of open child protection case management in each of the counties. No funding was available for the department this year. We want them to do the case reviews of these cases that are going to have to be reviewed. We want the department to be able to do that. They wanted to carve out part of our $15 million, and the legislature said, no, we're not going to do that. So therefore, the case review process was delayed until next year, July 1 of 2027. There has been a working group that's been working on this and will expire actually at the end of the year, which doesn't make sense to me right now because there's work to be done next year. So we will continue to push on that one. And then the third item that I want to mention is an ongoing issue. It relates to long-term services and supports, or LTSS. In 2025, the governor, the legislature all proposed pretty significant cost shifts to counties. I mean, very significant. So we were fighting that for some period of time when they decided, okay, let's delay this into the next biennium and let's create a task force to review this. How do we start to look at the growth in long-term services and supports? Counties and providers are charged with finding $178 million by July of next year. So this task force has been working. The counties have 6 seats on it. It's a huge task force made up of providers, consumers, and their families. Counties have 6 seats, 2 from MICA, AMC, and MAXA. They started their work last year. Their report is due December 1st of this year. So the 2026 legislature that just finished did book some savings in this area in LTSS, but counties were not given the credit toward our $178 million task that we're supposed to find. So we are in the process, that group is in the process of identifying other potential savings, and part of this discussion is we've got to get some of those savings that we're seen last year, you know, we need to get credit for that. So otherwise, if nothing happens here, there'll be another cost shift on July 1st of 2027. So working on that as well. So I wish I had some good news. You did get some money for related to the rural health grant, a children's mental health grant. You are getting some money there. I think it was $333,000. So I guess there is one piece of good news that I want to share there. And with that, I just want to call out your staff. Work closely with Kara Griffin and Tammy Lewick, and just want to make sure that I just call them out because they're always just a phone call away, and you know, just such a value to not only you but all counties. And with that, I'd try to answer any questions.
Quick question for you, Deb. This 178 million, if we can't find it, it's going to be a cost shift. Any idea what Crow Wing would have to absorb?
You know, the LTSS piece, we kind of looked at that with some of the SNAP changes as well. So part of that is built into that 403,000 just because that's part of where we think some of those crossovers also occur in that regard as well. So we think it's part of that cost.
Well, this board will have a challenge next year for their budget for 28, so.
Just kind of a comment, you know, it's like we normally would say, well, let's go down to the state capitol, let's go work on this, work on that. It's almost like they got to work on their own stuff down there for the state. I mean, it looks like a lot of the stuff they're doing, they're trying to, and you're going to bring this up when you bring up that problem the state faces in its long-term funding. And they're trying to, are they righting their ship or are they deciding to dump it into ours? And how much of that and how much voice do we have in saying, you fix your stuff and then come and talk to us?
Yeah, I mean, that is the question. I mean, coming to 27, right? I mean, and we'll try to make sure we steer the conversation in a productive way, but that is the question, because we're gonna need to be playing both offense and defense in 27, but yeah.
Okay. Thank you for being there.
Thank you, guys. Commissioners.
Now you can go back.
Good morning. I'm John Paul Yates. I represent MICA on environment issues, along with my coworker Rachel Sosnochik, who I'm filling in for because she's out on maternity leave. So it's good to be with you this morning. Commissioners, I'm just going to cover in detail two or three of these items. The first is broadly, and I would say more forward-looking as we look at the next upcoming legislative session. First being around defending waste to energy. So in the spring, the Public Utilities Commission had issued a final ruling on a docket that allowed for life cycle analysis to be used to include the burning of solid waste under the state's carbon-free standard. There was a petition brought by some environmental groups to have that ruling reconsidered, and that was taken up at their July meeting, and the Public Utilities Commission denied the petition, so that ruling will stand. Additionally, you know, this last session, we saw legislation to restrict the use of the HERC, the incinerator in Hennepin County. I believe that we'll continue to see those bills, and depending on the outcome of the election, there could be a more broad push to limit waste to energy statewide. The second issue I wanted to highlight is continued push for increased SCORE grant funding. SCORE grants help fund recycling, composting, waste reduction, and household hazardous waste management programs. There's been legislation to redirect the remaining 27% of the state solid waste tax collections to fund SCORE grants. That's something that has had broad bipartisan support. But again, as Nathan will talk about with the state's budget outlook, as well as some changes coming because of retirements in the election, for one example, the tax committee in the Senate will look very, very different. So that'll be a key environment priority, but also we'll have a lot of throughways with the state budget as well. The last thing I wanted to mention is product stewardship programs. So the packaging program is currently being implemented. There is a battery bill that was brought last year at the legislature that received a lot of stakeholder engagement. negotiation among legislators. Very possible that that is ready to pass this upcoming session. And then there's also a broader e-waste bill, but is not as far along, I would say, from a stakeholder engagement negotiation standpoint, but will be definitely brought as a bill this session as well. Those are my updates. Happy to take any questions.
Can you just expand a little bit on the bonding money for the construction of demolition landfill transition costs? What did it actually got in there? And then what, if it did, what's that money for?
Going to look to Nate on that. It did not, it was not included in this year's bonding
wasn't.
bill. I think
Okay.
it has been used as an education piece.
Okay.
And will be something that is pushed for in the future. I think it was a new item on the platform, and just given how bonding works, I think is set up to be a future.
Because we're actually all on the solid waste committee here and we have discussions all the time, and I believe there is a push towards having a lined demolition, which is gonna increase the cost of getting rid of construction materials and what have you, if you're gonna require that they be lined.
Yeah, I can send you later today kind of some of the numbers for what the requests were compared to what came out of the bills the last couple of years on this. But like JP said, yeah, it's a newer issue in some ways too, so.
One thing you need to work on too is we're trying to get our landfill permit, and this Minnesota Pollution Control Agency is completely out of control. I don't know why they don't want to get our permit to us. They're dragging their feet, and they've got all kinds of requirements. You know, I think the citizens of Crow Wing County need to be very worried that if we don't get our permit and we have to close down the landfill, their garbage bills are probably going to triple, if not more, if we're going to have to if the haulers are going to have to haul the trash down to either Elk River or Wisconsin. I guess it's okay to haul it to Wisconsin. I guess that's what the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency wants, but we've got some big things cooking here that we need to get taken care of, and I just wish I was a legislator so I could put the pressure on them or cut their damn funding, because apparently they don't want to, they're not working for the citizens of Minnesota. Anyway, there's my soapbox. Get all that, Renee?
Get your quotes in there. There was also something with that MPCA, they had that big, you guys sent it to me, and thank you for that. It was like 300 pages, but where they're also targeting, I serve on a solid waste work group through AMC, but where they're talking about, there's this talk about going to a zero waste, just like the 2040 for zero carbon. That's impossible. I mean, I think we can move the needle. I think we can do a lot of things by moving the needle. I think some of that SCORE grant funding, I think we could come up with some innovative ways of doing it if you let the counties take care of it and do that. Because every county I've learned with in this, being on that solid waste workroom, we all have different issues. You know, some of the counties are burning because they have no place to bury it. Some of the counties are hauling it over to Wisconsin because that's what they need to do. The metros are doing a lot of stuff with the composting and reducing the amount of it. Not any one of them will fit all. And so I think if we could test some of that out, try some of that out with some of this grant funding, it would give us an opportunity to at least head in the right direction to move the needle. Going to the 2040 rule on carbon it'll be interesting. I don't know if I'll be around in 2040, but it'll be interesting to see if we ever get there. But if we can move the needle, I think that's great. But to draw a line in the sand and say it has to be done by then, it just costing everybody a ton of money.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right, Commissioner. I like the way you phrase it, continue to move the needle, right? I mean, even the PCA's own guidance would say that waste to energy is more efficient than landfilling, right? And we just need to continue to educate in this area and talk about, okay, if we want to continue to move the needle, how do we do that? But also how do we be realistic about how we do that, given the facts on the ground?
And since there is so much of that SCORE funding goes right in their general fund, which has become their, oh, we can't touch that because we had to keep our state budget looking good.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
Yeah, great
Yeah, yeah.
segue. State budget picture. So these numbers here are in the millions. So if you look at general fund revenue versus general fund spending at the state for fiscal this biennium and the next biennium, general fund spending was obviously way above general fund revenue this year. For the last few years, the legislature has been balancing the budget by rolling over essentially one-time surplus or a current positive balance, which is sometimes what MMB calls it. In 2023, we had a really, you all remember the $18 billion surplus, a lot of that was not spent, and it's just been kind of getting rolled over to cover the gap between revenue and spending. You can see that the gap is shrinking in 28, 29. There's a few reasons for that. In some cases, it's reduced spending. In some cases, it's costs being shifted to the counties. In a few cases, it's new revenue being raised. But that gap is smaller. Now, it's still, if you look at it, a greater than $2 billion gap. That's not nothing, even at the state level. Of course, I do want to keep it in perspective. It's not insurmountable either. In November 2010, there was a forecast that said Minnesota is going to have a $6 billion deficit when the budget was about half this size, right? So it is significant. It does matter. It's going to constrain a lot of the picture at the Capitol next year, but it is not an insurmountable issue. I should mention that July general fund revenue came in $133 million above forecast, but these monthly forecast revenue is up and down a lot of the time. It's really the next big picture that's going to happen is going to be the first week in December when we not only figure out, okay, what are the updated versions of these numbers, but what does it look for 30 and 31? A lot of 30 and 31, if you're talking about the state fiscal picture, is determined by the national economy when it comes to revenues, not by spending, but by revenues, right? Right now, the national economic picture is worse than it was the last time we had an economic forecast released in February. Obviously, we're looking at a lot of the same issues that we were looking at in 2025, just to be blunt about it, right? We're going to continue, we're going to try to move the needle on SCORE, right? And trying to get general fund spending in that area and other areas. But in 26, we basically saw the legislature, they kind of punted on a lot of these long-term decisions, right? They have one-time surplus, just like in 2027. We're going to have a one-time surplus with the structural deficit issue. But as Nancy mentioned, we got one-time money for SNAP, we got one-time money to implement the act, but we didn't get ongoing dollars, right? So we're going to, now this is a budget year, so I do think there's going to be more of a window to try to get ongoing dollars, even though these structural deficit issues do exist. And this is going to be regardless of what party's in power, right? The math is the math, right? So this is kind of the issue that we've been skirting around and talking about. I do think that in a budget year, though, there are going to be opportunities, but it's not going to be easy. We're not looking at the kind of fiscal picture that we were, certainly not in 2023, or even 2019, 2017, 2015, a lot of those years where during the budget setting years, there was a surplus, even if it wasn't historically enormous, it was still, $1 to $2 billion structural surplus. That's not where we are right now.
So I'm going to just expand on that. When I first got elected and took the oath of office in 2003, the budget for the state was $30 billion. Now that you say it's at 72, I just looked it up. That's a 6.09 increase every single year. That's how your state government is growing at that rate, which is not, I don't think it's what people are getting when if they're on Social Security, they're not getting a 6% increase every year, I can tell you that.
Yeah, a lot of the state increases in human services spending, at the MICA board meeting last week, we had a presentation from Minnesota Management and Budget that kind of just showed how much human services spending is increasing in particular compared to other areas. And as you all know, implementing a lot of the human services needs and administrative things across the state, that's relatable, but that's really what's driving a lot of the increase, I would say, in particular over the last 3 years and moving forward over the next 5. This is the last slide. Obviously, retirements are having an impact on a lot of committees. JP mentioned there's going to be all new GOP senators and the Senate Tax Committee. You've got a lot of Senate chairs in particular moving on, Ann Rest, Sandy Pappas, Melissa Wicklund. These people are all really helpful on any number of issues. And in the House, Representative Paul Torkelson is moving on. He was the House chief author on our modernization bill. Senator Wicklund was the chief author in the Senate. They were both extremely helpful in making sure that county voices were really helping shape that language. And then, of course, you've got the election in November. So we'll see what impact that has. The other thing that's going on right now at the MICA level is our policy priority setting. We had kind of a first step last week at the board meeting, which we went over and kind of talking about, okay, what are going to be our top priorities? What do we need to be talking about the most at the Capitol? And between now and December, we're going to figure out exactly what those issues are, and that conversation is going to be shaped obviously when it comes to priority setting by the commissioners and a lot of the details. We're also going to make sure that your staff is really looking over everything to make sure that Crow Wing County's voice is heard in that process. So that's all I have. Happy to answer any other questions. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you for coming.
I don't know if it was as depressing as the meeting last week, but
Morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners. I'm here to talk about our funding cuts for our AIS program for the 2027 season or fiscal year. Exactly. And we just wanted to present a few options that we have come up with and how we would move forward with our plan next year and just kind of seek some guidance on what your thoughts are on these options, and then let you know that our plan is to present these. We have a wrap-up and proposed plan presentation every year that you're all invited to, and we have that set for October 21st as of right now. That date could change, but it should be within that same week. But as you'll see here, so the 2026 aid that we will receive this year is $472,000. In 2027, that amount will be $232,407. As of right now, I'm estimating about 18,000 rollover. Of course, that could change with unemployment and different charges that come in before the end of the year. And so our first option here, this isn't exact, it's just giving you a good estimate of where we could be at. Right now, we cover 43 landings, and we could decrease that a little more, or almost in half here. And we would cover all of our landings like we do now, Friday to Sunday, Memorial Weekend through Labor Day weekend. And those grants that we give out to lake associations, which are typically about $68,000 of our budget, we would cut that in half as well. So basically cutting the whole program in half is option one that we're laying out for you. So of that.
So let me, before you move forward, so the grants that you give out, the grants are out of this money that we give to the lake associations?
Yes.
I thought you told me, Gary, that we can't give the money to the lake association. Because I was saying, why don't we just give it to the lake associations and let them do with it what they will? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Out of this money, we can give them grant money for that if they're going to treat the lake or something, have you? Okay.
Correct.
All right. And how much is that? 68,000?
Just over 68,000 that we typically budget.
So that would have been 68,000 out of the 472. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
this year, yep.
Perfect.
So yeah, our first option, we're looking at decreasing that in half, so that'd be about 35,000, and then those landings also about in half, maybe a little less. So that would come out to be, of that 232,000 next year, 15% would go to grants, 75% would be for the inspectors, and then 10% would go to Crow Wing County staff salaries. Our other option.
Just before you move on, what are the different colors of your map legend?
Those we just took the old map and just to show you how some of the landings we might cover. So the colors would all be one color next year, but what map we have now, so we have red landings, yellow and green. So red is highest priority, busiest, or most at risk for infestation, or are already infested. Yellow would be our middle priority, and then green, which you won't see on here, is our lowest priority. So they're covered in, that's how they're covered. And then option 2 would be to decrease those landings a little further, but keep that grant amount at the same amount as we have been. So keep it at that about $68,000, but decrease our landings a little bit more.
Jessica, how many, are all the grants being used? How many grants did we put out last year? I mean,
Yes, we actually went over, I don't have the exact amount, I want to say it was like $1,500 over our budgeted amount for grants.
Of 68,000?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, okay. So people are using the grants?
Yes, they are, and treatment is very expensive, so we're just touching their treatment costs with these grants.
And the balance of that isn't picking up all the treatment costs. Those lake associations are also taking their own funds and putting it with it.
Correct, yes,
Yeah, the grants aren't covering it all.
right.
And then John, too, the lake improvement districts are the ones that are collecting that money, and then they're doing
also
the
using
treatment.
that.
I don't know if lake associations are so much doing the treatments, maybe they are, but I know the lake that I live on is, the lake improvement district uses that money to do the treatment.
Because you have a lid on that lake.
You have a lid.
Yeah,
so-
Whitefish does not have a lid. They
Right.
just have a lake association, so that's a different.
Correct,
they
it
use
could
their
be the
funding.
lid or the lake association that can
Either one
receive
of
the
those
funding.
will work.
Correct, yep.
Are any of the lids getting these funds now?
The lids? Yes, they are.
Okay.
Yes.
How many of these are the lids gonna be cut in either of these options? Is that what you're showing us, or what's the difference in the four that are not getting cut in option number 1 compared to option number 2? What are those for? And how was that decided?
As far as landings we would cover?
Yeah.
That we would decide before the meeting. This is just a high level, just to kind of show, we don't know for certain, but it would mostly be just those red dots and cutting a couple of those, actually.
And some of the lake associations have bought extra time or funded some of those
Correct.
inspections.
Yep. So like this year, we moved our opening weekend to Memorial Weekend instead of fishing opener. So we had many lakes ask for coverage from fishing opener to Memorial Weekend, and then we bill them and they reimburse us for those costs.
Out of their either lid or lake association.
Yes.
Okay. This is an area that just, kind of frosts me a little bit because, it's all public water, and as we've just had a discussion a couple meetings ago, it's public water, and which means that, these lake associations are taking money out of their own pocket. They're paying the taxes on the lake and taking money in their own pocket in order to support the lake they're on, even though it's public water. And lids are turning themselves in a taxing district, and they vote on that and allow themselves to do that. And the DNR, I shouldn't say the DNR, I have to say the state says, we need to balance our budget, so why don't we just cut that one in half? I mean, in Crow Wing County are about 10 or 12 counties in the state of Minnesota. We are lake-centric. You take our lakes out of Crow Wing County, let's look at our numbers again. I don't think we'll want to look at them, so.
What does lake-centric mean?
Lake-centric.
Lots of lakes?
That pretty much Crow Wing County evolves around the value of our lakeshore. It's a large part of our tax base. Maybe Gary, you know this. How much does our lake properties bring in of our total levy in Crow Wing County? Do you have a number for there?
Not off the top of my head, Commissioner.
I think I have it. I think I've asked you for it, and I think you gave it to me.
Yep.
It's
I
a
just don't
substantial
remember.
amount. It's 30–40% of our revenue comes in the state, or this county, because of lakes.
I still think, have you got an option 3?
Not today, no.
It's just
There's a
1
lot
and
of
2?
options, but yeah, just
Yeah.
kind of.
I don't know, just for me, I've always thought that this whole thing of inspections, yeah, I've often said that the cows are out of the barn. So now we're inspecting lakes. And what's to say a duck gets a a weed stuck on its leg and it flies over to the next lake. To think that you're going to stop this, I think you got to try to figure out how to treat the problem rather than thinking you're going to stop it. It's already happened. So I just think this whole inspection thing is just, I really think it's a waste of time. I really do. So
Madam Chair, if I might chime in here, the one commissioner with very few lakes in my district, but what I want to say is that when it comes to our watersheds, we look at prioritizing the dollars that you receive. Here, the state's just cutting 50% from everybody. I don't understand them not taking a look at prioritizing areas of the state where, so I think of our area, you think of the Alexandria, Detroit Lakes area, where we are lake-centric. I think that was the term.
Word of the day.
That's the word of the day.
De minimis.
And prioritize that so that they can look at, there's some areas where the lakes are so infested that we're not going to overcome it. In our area, we have lakes that we can still preserve, some that we might even be able to treat out of this situation, but we're in a much better position than some of the counties. So I disagree with the state in how they administered this cut. It's pretty easy just to sit there and say, we'll just cut 50%. That's a terrible level of irresponsibility in my book. They could have looked at it a little more constructively and where can we best put those dollars for the value that we want to get out of it.
So Jessica or Gary, so could there be what do you think of the option of just giving out the whole thing for grants and for treatment? Because I know that down on Lower South Long, I mean, if I'm going to go out with my pontoon, I got to be out a long ways because the weeds are so thick and it's just tangled up in your propeller that you can't even, it isn't even fun boating. I mean, so you got to be way out there. So what do you think of that idea, or is that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a valid point, Commissioner. I want to refer back to a couple of years ago. We had Nick Phelps, Dr. Nick Phelps from MASERC, the folks that are studying these aquatic invasives, trying to figure out a way to treat them to get them out of the lakes. And when he was here, when he presented to the board then, him being the expert in this field, he still believed at that time that the inspections do more help to slow the spread. It's not to prevent it, it's to slow the spread of the AIS. Because zebra mussels are all over already.
Right.
But we only have 1 or 2 lakes that have starry stonework. You know, we don't have any of that flying carp stuff up here yet. But there's like 200 invasives that continue to threaten to add to the pile of stuff that make our lakes less desirable. And this program isn't ever going to stop it. I agree with you on that. But it is trying to slow it, you know, down is basically what the goal was here. But yeah, treatment, we could take the $200 and some thousand and write the grants, triple them, and say we'll pay for as much treatment as the program could. That's an option for you today. Or is it, you know, is there a philosophy that these inspectors that are doing all this public relations work, helping folks be educated, doing the right thing to keep the weeds and the snails that might be on your boat off of them before you go to the next lake and just continue to, you know, it's like cover your mouth when you have a cough. Well, don't worry about that. Don't cover your mouth. Just cough on the next person, is the way I kind of see it. But yeah, these were just the 2 options going. There never was enough money to satisfy all these lake associations that we have in this county. And with these 2 options, they're not going to be happy. They're not going to be
happy at all. They're really not going to be happy with this.
Not going to be happy there.
I did, if I could, sorry.
Yep, keep.
Just, Commissioner Lee, your question as far as there's 2 lids that currently get funding from us that we just say, here you go, run your program. That's the City of 50 Lakes does it with LaPoa up there and Ruth Lake Association. The reason we didn't put them in these options is we still looked at our core, the map that MASERC does, and all this survey data shows where the boaters go to the next lake and how many inspections we do. So while it's easier for us to say, here you go, if you have the philosophy that you're going to have inspectors. If you're not going to have inspectors, we can definitely have an option 5 if you want. But the amount of boat traffic on Ruth Lake and East Fox that mainly gets staffed up there, a little bit maybe on Mitchell, is 2 boats maybe every 4 hours versus a lower Hay Lake that might have 50 an hour. And so that's just where we think we get more bang for the buck with these red, high traffic accesses. So while a lot of those lakes are already infected, you're reaching a lot more people than sit there all day and you get 4 boats. That's the philosophy. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I just wanted to have a better explanation from the Commissioner.
And you just bring me into the situation I looked at when I got involved in this. And the watershed plans that I'm on, they don't really get involved in the AIS end of it. The watershed plans are a totally different package. Right now, that hasn't ever come over from either the Clean Water Fund or BOWS or anything for funding to look at doing AIS. One of the things when I got looking at this, when it was $10 million, it was $5 million for the number of landings you had, and then $5 million for the number of access you had, split up across the state just by numbers. Didn't talk anything about prorating it by usage. So St. Louis County up there is the largest county with a lot of lakes. They get the largest AIS funding up there. They also have Lake Superior. You know, they have a little bit of a lakeshore along that. So they get the largest funding. But that doesn't mean that landing up there, you know, is going to get 1 boat traffic a month in some of those landings they have up on some of those remote lakes, where, like you said, either Lower Hay, take over at Pelican there, taken on the Cross Lake and that middle landing on Cross Lake. Those will see 50, 60 boats. If you ever drive by there on a weekend, you'll see 50 or 60 trailers sitting out there at that landing. So that's something I was wanting to push with other counties that are lake-centric, to try to sit there and say, legislator, are you really looking at this right? We're known as 10,000 lakes. And these 5 or 6 or 8 counties represent what Minnesota is in those 10,000 lakes. But you're treating us as if we're a lake up in St. Louis County that's 40 miles off the main road. So that's something I'd like to work on, especially when they keep decreasing the funds. And with the funds, they said they were going to be able to, we're going to be able to offer more grants or more stuff. I think the lobbyist that was with Micah said that ain't happening. It's just going into the funds. They're not really offering us any more help with our lakes here. And weeds are going to be in a lake, Paul. There are weeds in a lake, but these are not weeds. This is AIS. This is stuff that shouldn't have been here, that is here. And again, I'll go back to my previous thing. We're not going to fix it, but education is a way of moving that needle. So that's all I had.
Okay, you got your direction.
Got us quiet.
So we're kind of, you know, is the board leaning towards just cut everything in half? Do they like to keep the grants where they're at, cut the inspections even further down? You know, we will have a wrap up and invite all the lake associations in too, just as a heads up. When we had 43, there's no way we can fund 43 landings. So you will hear from a good chunk, even if we keep inspections, that we just can't. We don't have the funding to do what we did this year.
If you're reading my tea leaves, I'm for all grants.
I hear that.
Okay.
No, but I see.
And I hear
I would
that.
like to have
It's
that
not-
meeting and see. There might be some other things we can do. It depends upon what the Lake Association, what the LIDs are willing to maybe help out in some of these areas.
Gary, Jessica, when you start to look at option 1 versus option 2, when you get to the point of actually identifying which landings you plan to service or plan to staff, is that going to be before or after the October 21st meeting?
We would present that at that meeting.
You would present it at the October 21st meeting?
And we probably get, I mean, we definitely can shoot an email out a week or 2 before and say, here's what we're thinking, so come on in and have a discussion. The one thing that we missed, maybe while you're going to give us some tea leaves, The one thing we're pretty certain of is this is just the county money. So let's say we can only do, let's just pick a number, either 10 landings. We're really confident that the lake associations, the LIDs, will put more money in so that our inspectors go out and cover more landings. So there's going to be a lot more of this program funded by Lake Association or LID activity than there was this year, because they're going to want that even if they have to pay for it.
Although, Gary, we just had a case, I'm not going to say which lake it is in my district, where the Lake Association said, oh, we'd like to have more coverage. And then when you went to send them the bill for $800, they said, we don't have $800. So I don't know that I'd put much.
I hear that. It was one example of a lake association that now knows, that said they will take steps to talk to their membership.
Yeah.
If they want to, get a fund going for that. There's a lot of lakes out there that I just can tell you, I know they're going to pay for some, we call it expanded coverage. Sure. It's going to be expanded coverage that we had covered this year, that will actually be expanded covered next year just to get the coverage they had this year, if that makes sense.
There are a couple of things at play when you talk about LIDs who will pay for the expanded coverage, or to maintain the coverage that they had, which is essentially going to be expanded coverage for them. That means you're going to see a lot more LIDs coming back to you to say, hey, can we increase the cost of what our special assessment is, what our amount that we are collecting? Because in order for them to do the same level of work of what has been done before, they're going to have to increase their contribution that they're receiving and still be able to do the treatment, even if you are providing the grants and some of the other things as well. So that is one of the things that you will be looking at. I think one thing to consider is these are a couple of options that are being put before you. You've heard another option being just simply do grant funding to all of the lake associations and the LIDs if they would like to see that. I think one of the things that probably helps to make some determinations for all of you are which landings are we talking about dealing with? That's going to make a difference to you in your own particular districts to some extent, as far as how much coverage is going to be recommended in your areas. And perhaps one of the things that can be done is at that October meeting, the October 21st timeline, of kind of identifying what areas are we talking about for option 1, option 2, what does option 3 look like if we just went strictly grant funded, and kind of get some feedback from your LIDs, from your lake associations as to where do they feel the best bang for the buck is going to be. I don't know that you have to make a decision between option 1 and option 2 today.
I'm just seeing where they're leaning, that's all.
And this is, one data point as we look at what this is. There's not necessarily a levy impact that we're talking about from a budget perspective, so that's not really part of our deadline of September 30th that we have to work toward if you want to look at it that way. But I do think that there are going to be some differences of opinions, not only between the 5 of you, but between the lake areas within your communities. And that will be part of what will shape your decision that you are going to need to make. So if I was reading the tea leaves, what I would suggest is that you direct Gary and Jessica to take option 1 and option 2 and start carving down what landings they think would be appropriate in that regard, to bring option 3 of just grant funds only to the LIDs and the lake associations, present all 3 options at your October 21st wrap-up meeting, come back to you all with some information after that.
One of the things that you brought up in far as the LIDs, and something that we have as kind of a weedy issue there, and I'll use that as the operative word, is some of the LIDs were formed that allow the LID to have a meeting and increase what they're asking for. Some of the LIDs do not have that, and if I remember right, the last LID that wanted to increase that, they had to go over and reform go and get the from every member and try to do that, which is quite a process to do. Is there any way, if those other LIDs want to increase that, are we pretty much bound by that? And how many LIDs, Jessica, are bound by that agreement that they would have to come in and redo their LID in order to be able to increase what their members allow them, or their residents or the taxpayers allow them to take.
I believe we have 10 lids now, and all but 3 of them would have to go back and get all the signatures if they wanted to increase
Seven of the lids
above.
would have to go back, go through the whole process in order to raise their, in order to become a taxing unit and raise their,
Or they would have to take their existing revenues that they are generating from that, and instead of this much for the treatment plan, it would be this much for the treatment plan and this much for inspections. They wouldn't necessarily have to,
they couldn't increase their
they
revenue.
couldn't increase their assessment revenue, but they could allocate how they were going, because I think you can probably say inspections qualify for AIS mitigation pieces under what their plans would allow. But they wouldn't be able to say, if we have a $100 assessment, we want a $200 assessment now to cover both things equally. They would have to go back and start that whole process
And that's
again.
state statute?
Yes.
That's state statute, that's the
Yep.
way they're, and so the ones that redid their lids, the 3 or 4, or the newest lid that came in, what was that, Mission?
Mission.
Did they have theirs written where they can update it if they want, or they still have to come back and rewrite it?
Theirs was a set amount, if I remember correctly.
There was a set amount?
I
They
remember.
would have to come back and redo their whole lid in order to increase their set amount? It seems kind of strange they'd set up a new one like that when we've had the problems with the other ones.
I don't know that
Double
that's,
check, but I'm pretty sure they did set it up that way.
yeah, I don't recall.
If they
We went
did,
a
I'm
few
guessing
rounds with
that's-
them with different things
I would guess they did it that way to get enough names on the petition.
to get it to pass on their petition side of
Maybe,
things.
maybe, yeah, I'd have to look at that. It'd be interesting to see which ones are and make sure they're aware of that.
And the other piece with the lids, remember that because they're a special assessment, there's a calendar situation with the lids as well that they have to meet. If they're going to make changes, they have to run that up their flagpole with their membership at a certain period of time in the spring or the summer, I think it
But
is.
can get onto our
They have to
tax
have
rolls.
any assessment stuff certified by the end of November so that it can be on the following year's tax rolls for payment in July and in December. And that's the other part too, is if they're going to do additional inspections, if they're going to be contributing dollars, even if they are utilizing some of their funding, if they're like the group that Gary was talking about that didn't have $800 in the bank to pay it, some of these are paying their treatment plans as soon as they get their assessment amounts. Now, to fund an inspection program for the duration of the summer, when they're not going to receive any revenues until July, could cause some impacts there too.
Gary, do you have, just off the top of your head, any idea of how much it costs the county, staff-wise, to administer this? Because, you know, we're, in every spring, I'm sure there's a lot of people that come back, but you hiring about 30, 40 people. And I would assume that it takes staff an amount of time to do that, and the administration of this. Any idea how much staff time it takes for this?
Yeah, I think if you added up the staff time and land services and the help we get with HR, you're probably around 60 to 70% of an FTE total.
How much do we charge, what's our administrative we charge right now? on it?
10%.
10%, he
Well,
just
you could
said.
say 20% is what we take out of the AAS grants currently.
So it used to be about 20% of that 400,000, so it was
It
80
used to be
grand.
like 40%, and then the lake associations talked to commissioners, and the drive was keep our administrative costs very low, because you could pay 100% staff cost if you wanted. So we had it up about 60%, and that has been driven down to basically 20%.
Percent of the 400,000?
No, of the staff wage.
So you allocate the staff wages to it, you track the staff wages, staff time to this project.
The 2026 budget, if I'm looking at the AIS budget, had about 35,000. Am I
Yeah,
reading that
and we
right?
decreased it for
Yep.
27.
That
to
would have
about
been levy
22.
effect. Levy effect or not?
No, out of the AIS funding.
Okay, okay. So it is being funded out of the AS.
A portion of it.
And some out of levy.
Correct.
Okay, what is those amounts?
Be 65% on a levy.
And 35% out of the funds? Okay. No.
Well, that's something else you could look at and say, hey, you know what? We want more of this to go against staff cost. Well, there's lots of different ways to slice the turkey here.
So, like I said, I would suggest, if I may, what I would hear is that there's still some additional thoughts that are at play here. I think that you should come back with a list of landings that you would propose to reduce under each of your 2 proposals. You should add a 3rd proposal that would just simply put the grant funds to the individual lake associations, have those all 3 prepared and ready to be discussed at your October 21st meeting, and then bring feedback from that meeting back to you all for discussion and final suggestions or action at that point. And I think I'm seeing 5 head nods to that regard.
You're all invited to that October 21st, you know.
And if you want to hear the feedback from the local municipalities or from those local lake associations.
You're going to hear it before October 21st.
That would be the time to do it, is
You're
to
gonna
be
hear
in the
it
room to
before
hear
then.
what's being said at that point.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all we have, Madam Chair. No, that was